Hi guys, welcome back. So, I'm the senior software engineer. So, welcome back to our session today. Today, our training sessions for Angular. Why we are using right now in Angular? Because right now most of the companies are switches right now in Angular, like YouTube, Google's, and Gmail. Everything. Most of the companies are switching here. So, today our session is for Angular, Typescript, and RXJS. This is most of the important here. So here we'll take full series preparations for the Angular for you. So let us start for the Angular first. Then we can come back for the TypeScript and then RxJS. So one by one we can just clear here. First is Angular. Right? So first question is that for the Angular is what is Angular? Once you are thinking about Angular, so first question is arises here. What is Angular and what do you know about Angular? So here you can just give a smaller answer is Angular is one of the most JavaScript framework developed by the maintained by the Google. It is an open source front-end web framework based on TypeScript. It is most suited for the developing enterprise web applications. It is a code and a reusable and maintainable code. The Angular is a SPA. You can also call it as single page application. Why single page application? Because we can coordinate with a single index pages for all the forms. Okay. So now next question is what are some powerful features integrated into the Angular? So here in Angular, some of the power features like declarative templates, end-to-end tooling, dependency injection, and the various other best practices, the smoothness of the development path are there. So that's why the powerful features of the Angular is you can call it as dependency injection, template driven, or you can call it as declarative templates, end-to-end tooling, etc. etc. Okay. Next question is what is the main purpose of Angular? The main purpose of Angular is to create a fast and dynamic with a scalable web applications. Here we can create these applications very easily with the Angular using components and directive. So in Angular we are creating a very easily with the help of multiple components and directives. Here if the next paragraph we are just scaling here, you can just listen. Like Angular was started at SPA. Why I am calling it as SPA? It is a single page application framework. Okay, and now it is support to the dynamic content based on different user through dependency is injection. Okay, it provides a platform for easy development of a web based applications and empower of a front end developers. It is a cross-platform applications like YouTube is the most powerful example for users Angular, whatever I have already discussed earlier. Okay. So now next question is again arises once we are discussing about single page application here is. So the next question is again coming like what is the difference between Angular JS and Angular? Okay, if you are an Angular developer or if you want to become an Angular developer, so you might be know or if you want to go that interview, so first you might be know like what is difference between AngularJS and Angular. So let's compare between both. So here I'm just differentiated it like with the features AngularJS and Angular. So first point is version. So in AngularJS was a very first version initially released in 2010. It was in a browser side JavaScript used within HTML code and created a resolution in a web application development. It is popularly known as AngularJS. Okay, so if you are talking about Angular, later on Angular version where the complete rewrite the AngularJS. For example, and that is called Angular 2, not AngularJS. So that Angular 2 was initially released in 2016. So gap between AngularJS and Angular is for 6 years. So there is a nothing common between Angular 2 and AngularJS. So except the core developers team, after that Angular 6, Angular 7, Angular 8, Angular 9 and Angular 10. If we are talking about Angular 6, 7, 9, 8, 10, it is a version of the Angular were released that are very similar to each other. These later versions are known as Angular. So right now, currently, whatever we are using and in the development team or in a organization level, whatever the Angular version they are using right now, that is a Angular version 16. Okay, so if you are discussing about its architecture, so Angular JS support the MVC design model. But in Angular, if you are discussing, so it is totally supports component based directive models. Okay, why components? Because we are declaring or we are creating the multiple components based through using directives and models. Next point is supported language. Here is, so for supported language for the Angular JS is it recommended for the supported language is Angular JS for JavaScript, but in Angular it recommended and supported language for the Angular is Typescript. Okay, so next thing is expression syntax. If you are talking about in Angular JS, so specific ng directive is required for the image property and events, but in Angular it uses the functions, events, binding, property binding, double ended or data binding you can call property binding, and one more thing that is what we can call it is, and double curly braces we are using. I think property binding is there. uh, okay, so these things are there for binding the data to showing from components to view, or you can call it as a database to view. Okay, next point is a mobile support. If you are talking, this is the most relevant point for Angular JS and Angular differentiations. So if you are talking about mobile support, so Angular JS does not provide any mobile supports, but if you are talking about Angular, so Angular provides some multiple mobiles. I mean Angular provide mobile supports also. If you're talking about dependency injection, so there is no concept of dependency injection in AngularJS, but in Angular if you are discussing about, so Angular supports hierarchical dependency injection with a unidirectional and tree based changes detection. Okay, next point is a routing concept in AngularJS is not used, or you can call it as it is used in a route providers.when at the time of AngularJS. But in Angular, if we are discussing, so here we are using at the ret route config is for the Angular routing config file. Okay. If you are discussing about its structure, so if you are discussing about its structure changes, so in AngularJS, it is a first basic version of this is a basic version of our Angular. So here it is a very easy to manage of the software, or you can say that it's a framework. But in Angular it is a very simplified structure because it will take 6 hours at least after first version launched. So it is a very simplified structure that makes to development and maintenance of the large application very easy. So if you are discussing about its speed, so it is a very slower because it limited features are there. But if you are discussing about Angular, so it is a faster than Angular JS because it is upgraded features and upgraded version of that software. Now if you are discussing about supports, so Angular JS does not provide any supports or a new updated anymore, because after Angular JS it will just remove from the Angular. But if you are discussing about Angular, it provides the active support, actively supports for, and its frequent new updated version. If you're discussing, like it will just change in a new version within 15 to 20 days, or if I'm not wrong. Okay, so it will just changes of the new version within a month. Okay, it will really the Angular, or you can call it as Google developers will launch within a month for the new versions for the Angular. Okay, so now the next question is coming related to this one, like what are the biggest advantage of Angular JS? Oh, sorry, Angular. What are the biggest advantage of using Angular? So some of the Angular advantage we are written here right now. First one is Angular support two-way data binding, whatever we are discussing, like two-way data binding. If you are discussing, so two-way data binding is means ki the data will be sent from source to destination, or we can call it as component to view and view to component, both the side. And the syntax, or we can call it as, it will defined with a banana bracket, or you can call it as a both the bracket, like event binding and curly brace, I mean this big bracket. Okay, so we can just discuss it later also, because down one all the points are there, we'll discuss one by one. Next one is it follows the MVC pattern architecture. Okay, MVC if we are discussing, so model view controller, all the things are there, all the architecture it will follows. Next one is it support the static template and the Angular templates. Next one is it facilitate you to add a custom directive also. Custom directive means if you want to create your own directive, so you can also create your own directives in the Angular. It also support the RESTful API services using HTTP client model in service file. Next point is validations are supported in Angular. Validations means if you want to validate any forms, any data like login form, if you want to validate the username or a password, then it will support. Okay, next point is Angular provides the client side and server communication, both the side. It provides support for dependency injection also. It provides powerful features like event handler, animations, etc. etc. Okay, so some of the features are there, some more features are there. You can just study from the Google or anywhere else. Now we can relate to next question here is, what do you understand by Angular expressions? How are Angular expression different from JavaScript expression? Okay, so I think this is a good question. Angular expression are a code script that are used to bind Angular data to HTML. Like Angular data, if we are calling here, so this we can call it as component file, and HTML means whatever DOM elements are there, document elements model. Okay, document object model. So both are connected with each other. So whatever we are showing, we are written in a HTML file, and the components, whatever Angular codes are there, that is on a TS file, Typescript code. So Angular resolve the expression, and the result it returns where the expression is written. Angular expressions are usually written in double braces always. Okay, like this, and the similar to the JavaScript. The syntax of this Angular defines is like this. Okay, now follow. Now we can difference between both Angular expression and JavaScript expression here is, so the most crucial difference between the Angular expression and JavaScript expression is the Angular expression allows to the write JavaScript in HTML. On other hand, the JavaScript expression don't allows. So the Angular expression are evaluated against a local scope object. On the other hand, JavaScript expression are evaluated against the global Windows object. We can understand it better with an example. Suppose we have a component named text. Okay, so here we are imported like on init components, which is already from the library side. Component it is, and at the red decorator model where we can already having selectors. Selector means whatever the components are there, name are there. Templates means here we are written the HTML codes are there. So HTML things is directly you can write with the through to the two steps, or you can call it as two type. One is from Angular model, and second one is for the TypeScript here. Okay, so here you can return the HTML file name, or else you can directly here return within these braces. Okay, next one is a style URL. Okay, here the style, I mean CSS files are there, so you can directly type here also CSS, otherwise you can just type the components file also. Here we are exporting the class, like the component name is a text component and implements by the on init file. Here the message we are declaring here string, okay, and the message we are returning hello world. Constructors are there on init is there, so this is the file structure for this one, okay, which we are showing for the Angular. In above example, if we can see, the Angular expression is used to display message property, and the present template we are using to the Angular expression. We show or we cannot access the property outside of the local scopes. So this provides or this proves that Angular expressions are always evaluated based on the scope object rather than the global object. Okay. Now, if we are discussing about JavaScript syntax, so here is the JavaScript example. You can see, okay, so here we are returning use strict let we are using for this declaring this bar for the object, and document.get element by id we are calling here f dot inner html br this declaration words dot x. So after running this above code, we can see undefined display on the screen, although because the ideal to leave the property undefined, user to does not need to see this. Okay, see the following Angular code. Same code we are written here also in Angular. So here we are just typing here print the messages of that one whatever we are declaring here. Defining the Angular messages through taking the type of objects, okay, and we are just putting this message, so we'll print the data also. Okay, now the next question is, what is template in Angular? What you are thinking about Angular template? So Angular template is nothing but you can call it as HTML DOM element file. Okay, directly we can call, or in other word whatever we are written here, so we can just studying here. Template contains the Angular specific element and the attribute. These are the written with HTML and combines with informations coming from the model and the controller, which are further rendered to the provides to the user and dynamic views. Now, the next related question is, what is difference between the annotation and decorator in Angular? This is most of the related question here is Angular annotations are only the metadata you can call. So if uh, don't don't get confused if interviewer or anybody is asked you like what is metadata or what is annotations, both are the same. Set of the classes using the reflect metadata library, they are used to create an annotation array. On the other hand, decorator are design pattern used to separating decorator or modifications of a class without actually altering the original source code. Now the next question is, why was Angular introduced as a client-side framework? So if you are talking about client-side framework, so first thing is that Angular introduction of Angular is the web developers use vanillas and jQuery to develop the dynamic website. Later on, when the website become more complex with the added features and functioning, it was hard for them to maintain the code. That's why along with these there are where no previous or providers of a data handling facilities across the view of by jQuery. The need of this client-side framework like Angular was obvious that can make like life easier for the developers by handling the separations of a concern and dividing code into the smaller bits of information. Client-side frameworks like Angular facilitate the developers to develop advanced web applications like single page application. These applications can be developed using vanilla JS, but the development process becomes slower by doing so. The next question is for Angular is, how does an Angular application work? So for working process of Angular is, the Angular app contains a file named as AngularJS. This file contains all the configuration of the Angular app. While building the app, the building looked at this file to find the application's entry point. See the structure of angular.json file. Builder, this is the develop kit or develop libraries. Options, this thing, index, main, these files are there. This is the file structure of this applications is. Okay, once you are building any application, new application for the Angular, so this is the file structure for this one. So when the applications are entered in a build the section, then the option object in a main property defines. Okay, and the enter point or entry point of the application entry points is the main.ts, which creates a browser environment. Okay, the browser environments of the application to run and call the function, call it as bootstrap model, which bootstrap model of the application defined into two parts, or you can say that it is in a two steps of a main.ts file. One is a important import as a platform browser dynamic from Angular platform dynamically. Second one is a platform browser dynamic dot bootstrap module or app module. So the app module is declared as a app.module.ts file. This module contains the declarations of the component. So below example, if you can see, so one is imported for the browser module, second one is for the ng module, third one is for app module. Three files are there which is imported directly once you are creating any applications. Next one is for ng module at the red decorator, where the declarations part are there. This is the app name of the new application. This is imported file where the browser loaded it. Next one is a provider where the entry components are there and bootstrap models are there. If bootstrap is not there, it will not load the browser at the entry points directly. And this is the export file of that class of app module. Okay, so this is the structure, main structure once you are created any application, new applications. Okay, so the below example, if you are seeing the app component module.ts, once you are creating structures or a new application, this will create the app.component.ts file, where you can see the imported file of @angular decorator or @angular core with the help of components. So components are there, where we are having three things. We are already discussing about decorator components are there. Within that one, selectors are there, where we are defining the components name, app root. Next one is for template URL, where we are defining the HTML file. Third one is for style URL, where we are defining the CSS file. And the export class are there, that is the app components, and here we are writing the code. Okay, so the selector, now we are divided the declaration part or properties into three categories. One is for selector, one is for template, whatever we are discussing here, and third one is for style URL. Selector are used to access the component, whatever we are discussing, whatever the we are creating the components, that names are there. So selector is nothing but it is used to access the component. Templates is containing the HTML component file. Third one is for containing the style sheet file. Okay, so see the below this index files are there once we are creating any new application. So here HTML, we are started with HTML, then header are there, their metadatas are there, their titles are there. Once here base URLs are there, whatever if you are creating any your what you can call, you can use any logos for browsers URL, your URL of the applications, you can use here your image file also. Here metadata names are there, header close, body close, app roots are there. Why app root are there? Because it is a single page application. So here based on this app root, all the files are combined and calculated with this app root. Okay, that's why it is called single page applications. Now next question related to this question is why the Angular prefer to over the frameworks. What are the some advantages of the Angular over the other frameworks. So some frameworks are there that extraordinary build in a feature. Okay, if you are discussing about extraordinary, so it means to provide the several out of the boxes built in a feature like routing, state management, RxJS libraries, dependency injections, HTTP services, etc. etc. Next one is declarative UI. So Angular has a declarative UI. It uses the HTML to render the UIs of an application as the declarative languages. So it must, or you can call it, it much easier to use than the JavaScript. Next point is long-term Google support. So if you need any support, any help from the Google, so Google developers who is developing this software Angular, he will always support you in a long term. Okay, next question is, what are the difference or different life cycle hooks of an Angular? So this is the most common question which interviewer asks. Okay, so Angular lifecycle hooks, here we are defining the Angular components are created. When Angular components are created, just listen carefully. When Angular components are created, they enter their life cycle and remains where they are destroyed, the Angular lifecycle hooks. The check of the phases of trigger, the changes and specific phases, and during the entire durations, we are just discussing about lifecycle hooks. Okay, so first point is component lifecycle hooks is constructor. So here constructor are there because without constructor we cannot call this lifecycle hooks or this concept of the Angular. Okay, so the first point is of a lifecycle hooks is ng on changes. Second one is ng on init. Third one is ng do check. Fourth one is ng after content init. Fifth one is ng after content check. Sixth one is ng after view init. Seventh one is ng after view check. Eighth one is ng on destroy. Okay, going step by step. Whatever the codes are working, whatever the compilation times are there, whatever compilation things are there with the code, we can go step by step. These three things are running together, so, I mean step by step, synchronously. After that, these 4 points are working. Then after this, ng on destroy will work. Now we can just come back with a one-to-one points. So ng on changes. Why? What is ng on changes here in application? This method is called when one or more input properties of the components are changed. It means just need to understand the logic of this ng on changes is once we are changing the components of the data, like this is the application of this one Angular. So if we are changing any component details are there from here, so this one ng on changes will work directly. Okay, so what you can say, like the method is called when one or more input properties of the components are changed. The hooks receive the simple changes object containing previous content and the value of the properties. Okay, now once we are changing on changes will work, then what things are there? Ng on init. But ng on init works here. What is ng on init? So ng on init is a second lifecycle hooks of the application in Angular. It is called once after the ng on changes hooks work. It will use to initialize the components and set the input properties of the components. Okay, whatever changes are there, it will initialize that data. Next point is ng do check. So what ng do check will work? This hooks is called after ng on changes and ng on init, and it is used to detect the action on a changes of the Angular cannot detect. It is hooks are implemented on the change detection algorithm. So it means you need to understand, like after changes points are there, after initialization points are there, then this to check will work for checking the using the changes detection algorithm. It will just check the data or their components, like the data are correct or not. Next point is ng after content in it. This hooks is called when ng to check hooks work. These hooks respond after the content gets projected inside the components. Next point is ng after content check. This hooks is called after ng after content in it, and every subject is or subsequent to check it respond after the projected and content is checked. Ng after view init, it hooks is called after a component view and view initialization child component will work. After that, the ng after view check work. This hooks is called after ng after view init work. It responds after the component view or when the check component's view is checked. Next point is ng on destroyed. So this is the last point of this lifecycle hooks. This hooks is called just before after Angular destroy the components work. This is used to clean up the code and dispatch stack events handler. Is the above hook lifecycle describes the ng on init hooks and most often used to the hooks. That's how ng on init hooks. If we have any process data, then we can just check the creation and better understanding of this one. So here we are defining one examples also. So for see the details, here ng on initers are there. Okay, before this one constructor are there. Constructor will construct the data. Okay, for the private or any classes, or for the classes initialize that classes to the constructor using private or public variables or keywords. Okay, so after that this one ng on it will call. Okay, after that this all the features are working here. So next question is, what is AOT in Angular? AOT stands for ahead of time compiler. It is used to convert your Angular HTML and TypeScript code into the efficient JavaScript code during the build phase before the browser downloads and run that code. By the compiling of the application during the build process provides a faster rendering in the browser. So next question is, what is the reason of using AOT compiler in Angular? Why we are using this one? So the answer is, an Angular application is made to several components and the HTML template. Because of these Angular components and templates, the browser cannot able to understand them directly. So the Angular application required a compilation process before they run in the browser. Okay. So the next question is, what is the biggest advantage of AOT in Angular? So the biggest advantage is the rendering. It is faster. Second one is the Angular framework download the size of in a smaller file. Third one is the favor asynchronous request. Fourth one is the detect templates error easier. Fifth one is better security. I have used here most of the main points. You can also just go with the Google and search that one and study more. Because of the last video, you can just go through a faster. Now the next point is, what is GIT in Angular? This is most of the common question in Angular interview. So the GIT stands for just in time compiler. Okay, whatever the Angular is using here, it will run through just in time compiler, or you can call it a GIT compiler. It provides a dynamic translations or runtime compilation, which provides a way of executing computer code that involves compilation during the execution of the program at the run rather than before executions. Okay. Now the next question is, what is difference between GIT and AOT in Angular? So just in time, or we can call it a GIT compilers our app browser at a runtime while ahead of time, or AOT compiler is used to compile your application at a build time on the server. Next point is JIT compilation run by default when you run the ng build or ng shell in CLI command. This is used to development. On the other hand, we have used include AOT option with a ng build or ng shell command for AOT compilation. Next point is JIT and AOT both are used in a compile code on an Angular project. JIT compiler is used to development mode while AOT used to production mode. JIT is easy to use. We can easily implement features and debugging the JIT mode because here we have a map file, AOT does not. On the other hand, biggest advantage of using AOT for the production is to reduce the bundle size of the faster rendering or file. Next question related to this Angular is what is the concept of the scope in hierarchy in Angular? Angular provides the scopes object into the hierarchy that is typically used by the view. This called is as scope hierarchy in Angular. Okay, so this is the following typical example of this one. If you can see a root scope, root for the controller, root for the controller 2 dot dot dot. This is for the concept of hierarchy in Angular. Next question related to this one is what are the main building blocks of Angular application? Explain the pictorial diagram in Angular architecture. So here whatever the pictures are there, you can just see this is the template and this is the metadata. This is the component. So component and template both are combining with a property binding, or we can call it as event binding. Using this one, the template which metadata will call through directives in Angular will be loaded over there for becoming this one of the application is injected the service file also using HTTP service model. So if you can see here service injectable, so we can inject the APIs through service in a component model. Okay, then it will load to the template and it will just build through event binding and it will show the data into the HTML, or we can say that in a browser. Next question related to this one is what is difference between observable and promises in Angular? This is the most relevant and most important point or questions in Angular which interviewer will ask. In Angular, as soon as we make the promises and execution takes the places, but this is not the case of observable because they are lazy. It means nothing happens until the subscription is made. So the point is what is promises and what is the difference between promises and observable. Promises emits a single value, means at a one time it will emits only single value, but if you are talking about observable, it will emits multiple values over the period of time. Means at a one time it will emits multiple data or multiple streams of data. Okay, next point is it is not lazy, but if you are talking about observable, it is very lazy, and this observable is called until we can subscribe to its observable. Next point is we cannot cancel promises. This is the most important point. We cannot cancel the promises, but if you are talking about observable, so we can cancel it very easy. So if you are not if you not want to subscribe any APIs, anything, any observable data, any streams of data, you can just unsubscribe that one. It will just stop after one result. Okay. Next point is observable. Provide the operators like map for each, filter, reduce, ready, retry, when, etc., etc. Okay. So the next question is related to this one is this is the example whatever we are saying here. This is the understanding for the observable and this is for the promises. You can see. Okay, so now next question is what is directive in Angular? So the directive in a class in Angular which declare with @directive decorator, every directive has its own behavior and you can import them into the various components of an application. What were the main reason behind the introducing client-side framework in Angular? Like, so before Angular it was introduced, it is a history. Okay, so just discuss quick. So before introduced the Angular, the web developers used Vanilla.js and jQuery to develop the dynamic website. But the biggest drawback here is the technologies that logic and website give. The code becomes more and more and more complex to maintain it. For the website and applications that used complex logic and developers had to put extra effort to maintain the separations to the concern of the applications. Also, jQuery did not provide facilities to data handling across a view. That is the issue earlier. The client-side framework like Angular were introduced to overcome the above problem. Okay, because of that, the Angular is coming to provide a good solution for data handling, data binding, and single-page application. Okay, so it is also performing using the features of client-side frameworks such as Angular facilities to developers, develop to advanced web applications like single-page application. So the main reason of behind the introducing Angular were the creating the fast, dynamic, and scalable web application easily. Okay. Next question is related to this. Angular is what is Angular CLI? Angular CLI is a short form of Angular command line interface. It is a command line interface to craft and build application app or Angular app using Node.js styles module. It is Angular CLI used to install. How you can install the Angular CLI? This is also a question. So using npm, we are using npm command to install npm or Angular CLI. So this is the command to install Angular CLI. So you can type here npm install, or you can also type @Angular /CLI latest if you want to install any latest version of the application instead of this. So you can written here. After this one you can just type instead of latest you can type here like 16 version is running right now, so you can type here @16.x.x. okay, so it will install the latest version of the application. If again it is not installed, you can just take a space of there and you can just use double slash of force, or you can just use single slash of f. Okay, this will install instantly. Okay, now the following points is creating the new projects of Angular is you are using ng new. Okay, it will install the new application. If you want to generate or creating any directive or a services, you can just type ng generate or mgg. And if you want to create module, so nggm and module name. If you want to create, or you can type here ng g for generate, m for module, or module you can type here, and module name. Okay, anything like WhatsApp dot module. What's a module? Okay, so it will just create one more module. Next point is running the project is you can type here ng-serve or ngs. You can type. It will build the application, new applications in the Angular. Okay, so for this one, next question here is what is lazy loading in Angular? Lazy loading is the best concept in Angular. Without lazy loading you cannot use a big project in Angular. I'm again repeating, like in Angular if you are creating any new or a large project, so it is very difficult without lazy loading in Angular. So lazy loading is one of the most powerful and useful concept in Angular routing. It is make the web page easy to the download by downloading them in a chunks of instead of downloading everything in a big bundles. Lazy loading facilitates the asynchronously loading in a feature module or a routine whenever a routing requires using the property load children. Okay, so Angular lazy loading is a nothing but it loads on demand, you can also call. If you are given a single line of answer, then you can directly say lazy loading is nothing lazy loading is nothing but its load or its work on demand. Okay, in a single line of points, if you can call, it is also good answer for the question is lazy loading is nothing but its load or it works on demand. So like there is a four components like about form, here contact form, here we are calling as a home component, here it is gallery form, anything. Okay, so these are four components are there. If we want to call only single file or a home file, so if we are clicking on a component of a home, like here is a lots of components are there. If you are seeing like MCs are there, case are there, within a case lots of components are there, like here's a dashboard, within dashboard lots of components are there. Here engineer case details, here lots of masters are there, master within the master item bulks and items are there, lots of here user component, within a user components here multiple components are there, so lots of components are there. Okay, if I want to load a single components, where once we are clicking here user or item, so it will load only item. Why it will load only item? Because here we are using lazy loading concept. Here we are creating in each components or each module we are using a module file. Like if it is item, so here we are creating item module. If it is user, then we are creating user module. Okay, if we are creating here case management, so case management, within the case management we are using the case module. Okay, here if you are seeing, so here we are adding case management module. So what the data are coming over there inside that module file. So if you are seeing here module file, so these things are there within the module file. Here we are using the paths. Okay, so what our definition is, within that one we are creating a lots of components are there. Okay, so that is the advantage of using lazy loading. If you are creating 4 or 5 components, so if we want to load any single component, so it will load only single components data. Okay, so what is the benefit of using single data is to load on demand components to increase the performance of CPU utilization, your CPU utilization as well as memory utilization. Also it will just first the application, reliable the applications, and it will load asynchronously data using float children. Okay, so this is the good example of this one. So how we are using this, using load children, whatever I'm talking about. So here the load children are there, here imported files are there, whatever we are using the new modules. If we are using the about us module within the home module, so like this we are just importing that module. Okay, using load children, and then we are using this one. Okay, now the next question is, what is Angular router? Angular router is a mechanism that is facilitate the user to navigate from one view to another next view. You can call it as, if I want to, for example, if I want to move from home component to about us component, or a home component to contact component, so that is only one mechanism in Angular, which is a router link or a router navigations from Angular. We can just define that one, and after clicking on that one router link, it will just navigate to one component to another using router imports file without loading page. Okay, so what next question is, what do you understand by the router imports? So next question related to this router is, what do you understand by router imports? So router imports is nothing but representing a particular component view or a given URL is not part of Angular core. It is available library named as @Angular router. We have to import the required router components. This is the process is called router imports. Okay, like this if you are seeing. So this file, without importing this file, if it is not there in your application, then your router import or router navigation will not work. So the next question is related to this point is, what do you understand by router outlet and router link? So router outlet is a navigative or router outlet is a directive form of a router library that act as a placeholder, but it makes to export of the templates where the router should display the components that router outlet is used as a component. Okay, the syntax of the router outlet is this one, router outlet. Okay, where you can find this one, I'll just show you. Once you are visiting the app component, you can just find this one, router outlet. If you can see here, router outlets are there. Okay, router outlets is there. Why it is there? Because without this router outlet, you will not navigate from child to parent, or you can call it as parent to child. Okay, now on the other hand, if you are talking about router link, it will directives, or you can call it as router link. It is directive on the anchor tag we are using within a tag or anchor tag we can call to give a route control to those elements, since the navigation's path are fixed as assigned to string value. A router links directive as follows. As below, we are defining here router outlets are there, and router link we are defining within anchor tag whatever we are discussing. Here we are just given the path, and here we are using the router link. After clicking on this form, it will just navigate to the new one. Like whatever I am discussing about, if I want to move from home to about us, so we are just give the about components link, and once we are clicking here list of those, so it will just move on there. Okay, now the next question is related to this one is, what are the different route or router events used in Angular router? So the different navigations path of a router events are, one is a navigation star, second one is a router config load star, third one is a router config load in, fourth one is a router recognized, fifth one is a guard check star, sixth one is child active star, seventh one is active star, eighth one is guard check end, ninth one is resolve star, 10th one is resolve end, 11th one is activation end, 12th one is child activations end, 13th one is navigation end, 14th one is navigation cancel, 15th one is navigation errors. Okay, so the next question is related to this one. What do you understand by the router link active? So the router link active is nothing but a toggle of a CSS classes of an active router link binds based on the Angular router state. For example, a router will add CSS classes when the links active or remove them to the link or inactive. For example, if you are seeing here, we are adding here, like for this one we are adding here for this navigation bar. Okay, we are creating a router link. Okay, so this is a router link active. Okay, we are just given the path. If we want to active this route, So it will show the one link, or it will active it will show as a blue line or a active. Okay, so that's why we are using, if we want to show anything for active, we are using the default of router link. Okay, that is router link active features from the Angular side. Next question is, what do you understand by the router state? So the router state is a tree of the activated routes. Every nodes having the tree knows as about the consume, the URL segments, and the extract parameters of the resolved data. We can access the current router state from the anywhere. It is applications by using the router services and the route state of the properties. At the component templates, which will show the HTML tags, and the classes of my components or constructors are also there. So this is the example of this one. Okay, now the next question is, what is HTTP client and what are the advantages of it? So the most of the point, or the most question relevant of the Angular is, what is HTTP client? The front-end application use either XML HTTP request interface, or we can call it as fetch API, to communicate with the backend services over the HTTP protocol. So for the same purpose, Angular provides a simplified client HTTP API known as HTTP client. Okay, same thing it will do. So the based on this top of, instead of XML HTTP request interface, this HTTP client is available to the @Angular common HTTP package. Okay, if you are seeing this package, this will already imported over there. Once you are adding the new application or HTTP client, which will import your root module as follows. So once you are installing this one, it will show in your root file HTTP module files are there. Without this one, you cannot patch data from the database, or it will just communicate with your database to your front end. Okay, so the following crucial advantage of HTTP clients are: HTTP client contains the testability and features. It provides the type of request and the response objects. It provides the intercept or a request and response, both the things. It supports the observable APIs. If you are calling about observable APIs, so the streams of data will be observable, converted into observable, and then it will just subscribe, and then it will show on the browser. The HTTP client also support the stream of error handling. It will also handle the data or errors. Now the next question is, by default Angular uses client-side rendering for its application. Possible to make? Is it possible to make the Angular application render of the server side? Yes, this is a good question. Yes, it is possible to make Angular application to render the server side. Angular provides the technology called as Angular Universal, that is can be used to render application on the server side. So this is the most of the question, and your interviewer asks you, like, for, is it possible to make Angular application render in a server side? Yes, it is possible to render from the server side. Okay, so the next question is related to this one, is what is the best way to perform error handling in Angular? So for performing the best error handling in Angular is to request false of the server, or a fails or a reach to the server due to the network issue. In this condition, HTTP client returns a error object instead of success response. To resolve this issue, we must handle the components by passing the error object on the second call back to the subscribe method. Okay, see the following example. First one is, if you are seeing here fetch value, this is the function of the APIs. Here we are calling APIs like this dot user service dot get profile. So get profile is API. We are using dot subscribe. Here the API data will be subscribed. Here the data is coming. Okay, after coming the data, we can just use this keyword for using this data. User profile is a property where the data will be checked. If it is success, then success path will work. if it is showing error like whatever we are seeing, so if it is error, then it will throw the error. Okay, so this is the advantage of Angular to throwing the error or performing the error handling in Angular. Okay, so the next question is related to the Angular is what do you understand by Angular bootstrapping? So the bootstrapping is a main question of the Angular. If you didn't know, then you can just study more about bootstrapping in Angular. So bootstrapping Angular is a nothing, but it's allow the developer to initialize to start the Angular application. It is the initial part of Angular. Once you are start the application, then this option, I mean this bootstrapping option will come over there. Okay, so bootstrapping is a nothing, but it's allowed to the developers to initialize the start of the applications. Angular supports two type of bootstrapping. One is a manual bootstrapping. If you want to write bootstrapping in a manually, then you can create your manual. Otherwise, you can automatic bootstrapping are there. Okay, so bootstrapping in manual, if you are checking, so it's provide the more control and developers facilitate to the regarding to how to the needs of initialize the app, Angular app, where automatic bootstrapping is a nothing but it is specific automatically bootstrapping it started automatically start with the Angular app. So for once you are creating the new Angular app, so this will automatically import it over there, this Angular bootstrapping automatically. The developer need to add ng app directive to the application routes if they want Angular to bootstrap the application automatically. The Angular loads to associate module once the ng app directive and further compilation of the DOM work. Okay. Next question is related to this point is what is the decayed cycle process in Angular? If you are talking about decayed life cycle, then you get confused, but don't get confused. The decayed life cycle of the process in Angular is it is used to monitor the watch list of the track changes in a watch list to variables value. Okay, there is a comparison between the present and the previous version of the scope and a model of values in each decay cycle. So it will just watch when the variable will declare, when the classes are coming, when the data are coming. Will just comparison between previous and new values. So the case life cycle is it will check previous and new values and will compare between both and will throw that one this new version it scopes of model value each case cycles. Okay. Now the next question is what are the key difference between the components and the directive in Angular? So the key factors of both the things is components are generally used to creating UI, where the directives are generally used to adding behavior and existing DOM element. If you are talking about components, so component we are using at the red component metadata annotation attribute to register a component. But if you are talking about directive, so directive we are using at the red directive metadata annotation attribute to the register directive. It is used to break the application into the smaller part of called as component, but in a directive it is used to reusable components. Okay. Next point is if you are seeing the components, it is only the components allowed to use to the DOM element, but if you are talking about directives, so multiple directives are allowed to use to the DOM element. At the rate view decorators are the template URL, template mandatories on the components, but a directive does not use view. Component is used to define pipes, but in a directive it is not possible to define pipes. The next question is related to this Angular is what do you understand by Angular MVVM architecture? If we are calling it as MVV model, so don't get confused, it is MVV model. Like model view and view model architecture is Angular. Okay, so here we are defining this is view. If you are seeing the below example, this is view model and this is model. Okay, so this view is always connected with a view model. Okay, or UI is already connected with our components, so it will always changes like property binding or event binding or any bindings are there. So UI is always connected with components and view models are already there. So data double-ended binding, if you are talking about data dynamic data binding, so that is view model. If you are talking about if you are typing anything, then same time we are printing in a browser also if you want to see. So model changes events are there after upgrading here the model we can say as data. So the upgradation and the reads properties are both working on the same time. So this is view and view model. So model, what is model? Model is consist of the structure and the entity of the specific approach. In the simple words, we can say that model contains the data of object. Okay, model contains a data of objects. So whatever data we are throwing from the backender, that is data of object, that we can call it as a model right now. Okay, don't get confused. View is that thing whatever we can show in a browser. So the view is a layer that is on the application that is specific structure layout and the appearance of the users can see that on the screen on a browser. Display the data inside the model and it represents on the model to receive the user interface. Okay. So next is a view model. View model is a nothing but abstract of a layer of the application used to handle the logic of the application. We can call it as if there is a three things like Angular, database, and Node.js. So view model is a Node.js where we are writing the logic of the application and we are just combining of a backend to front end. Okay, or we can call it as Angular to database. We can use AngularJS for creating the APIs. Using that APIs, we are just patching the data from the database and throw it as browser. Next question is what is the purpose of async pipe in Angular? So for next question is for Angular is what is the purpose of async pipe in Angular? So async pipe is used to subscribe an observable or a promises and return the latest value it has emitted. Okay. So when a new value is emitted, the pipe marks the components that has been checked for the changes. Okay. So if we see the following example here is, so if you are seeing here, we are using div tag and we are using some data here timer. Okay, so if you are seeing here within the div, timers are there and the timers are called at s2 second. Okay, we are using between timer and async, we are using pipe operator. Okay, so this is the thing where we are using the importing of the timer of we are using the time new keywords with observable which observes the set interval of using observer.next with the 2 seconds. Okay, next question is what do you understand by services in Angular? Services in Angular is a singleton of objects you can call which once during the lifetime of the applications run. An Angular services contains the method and used to maintain the data throughout the life of the applications. Angular services are used to optimize as well as the business logic and models or data of the functions, various components of the Angular applications. Okay. The next question is related to this one is what is the key difference between the constructor and ng on The constructor is a default method in Typescript classes that are normally used to the initialize purpose. Okay, this is not part of Angular, but yes, this is part of Typescript classes which is normally initialized or initialization purpose we are using for the constructor in Angular. But other hand, if you are talking about ng on it, it is especially for the Angular method. It is used to define Angular bindings even though constructors are getting called first. It is always preferred to move all of your Angular bindings to the ng on it method. Like for example, if you are seeing the below example, here we are using constructor. It will call first for the initialization purpose for the classes, but after that this ng on it will call because of our all the properties, or we can call it as all the data's bindings are there within this ng on it function. Ng on it function will load once we are run the application or bind or compiling the application. Next question is related to this Angular is what do you understand by observable or observer in Angular? Observable is a most important question in Angular. Observable is an unique object just like a promise. Again, I repeat, an observable is a unique object just like a promise that is used to manage asynchronous code. If we can call it as asynchronous code means it is a stream of data. Okay, if there is a stream of data means there is a large amount of data, bundles of data where the functions are data are there is a ports data are there's a findings, events, and lots of different types of data are there within a stream data. It will just manage async data. After that, data will be coming asynchronous data or a stream of data. It will just move on to the observable first, because some data will come in a 2 seconds, some data are coming in a 5 seconds, some data are coming in a 10 seconds. So all the data will come as in a streaming format or like 10,000, 40,000, 50,000. So it will move to the observable. That stream of data will move on observable. So what observable here is? Observable is a unique object just like a promise that is used to manage asynchronous code. Observable are not part of JavaScript language, so that the developers must relay to the popular observable library called as RXJS. So observable is a part of RxJS. Also you can call the observable are created using the new keywords. Like for example, if you can see the below example, here we can use one observable vari variable using proper variable using const keyword. Okay, constant variable of this observable. Using this new keyword, we are using observable. Within that observable, we can call after the data of streaming coming with the observable, we can just pass this data into observer. Okay, we can use this arrow functions for dividing the stream of data in a smaller pieces. So we are using here set time out with a 1 second, and observer dot next will call that functions of this data. So this is the observable how we are using for the observable here is. Okay, so the next question is observer. So observable and observers are there. So observable you understood, I think. So observable is a nothing. It is a unique object just like a promises. It is used to manage asynchronous data, or you can call it as streams of data. It is a part of, it is not part of JavaScript language. So the developers must be relay of popular observable libraries called it as RxJS. So the observable are created using the new keywords. Observable if you are observer if you are talking about, so any object that has been notified when the state of another object changes, it is called as observer. Again I repeat, any object that has to notified when the state of another object changes is called as observer. An observer is interface for push based notification delivered by an observable. See the following example. Interface is interface observer we are created here. Like close we can use as a boolean. Next value is here void, error, and component or complete. You can see here. So now the next question is related to the Angular is how do you categorize data binding type in Angular? So we can categorize into three categories. One is form to source view. Second one is a form to view source. Third one is a view to source to view. First one is a form the source to view. Second one is a form view to source. Third one is a view to source to view. Okay. You can also call it as view to source or source to view or view to source to view. Okay. So now this is the following example, or you can see the syntax and the types also. So the data detection is from source to view, means this is the data binding, we can call it as. Okay, so first one is within the source to view, like backend to front end, or we can call it as component to view, is the expression of syntax is the expression. Okay, we are using within the double curly braces, or we can call it as target expression that is a property binding. Okay, so this first one is an interpolation, we can call. Second one is a property binding or attribute, anything. Second one is view to source. Okay, from front end to back end, or we can call it as HTML to components. So this is one way binding only, we can call. So here we are using event binding, like target we are using smaller brackets, and there we are using statements, whatever the functions are there or events are there. So we can call it as event binding. Third one is a view to source to view. It is we are calling two-way data binding in Angular. So we are using like this syntax are there. Okay, so this is, we can call it as banana bracket. Within the this bracket we are using small bracket. So this is called it as double data binding. Okay, so how we are categorize our data binding types in Angular? There is a three types and three categories are there. First is a one-way data binding, that is source to view. Second one is also one-way view, that is uh, uh, view to source. Third one is our source to view to source, or we can call it as view to source to view. Okay, now the next question is related to this one is yeah. Now the next question is, what is multicasting in Angular? Multicasting is the practice of broadcasting in the list of multiple subscriber or a single executions. Okay, here is a following example. If you are seeing multicasting, so we are creating as a variable multicast, where we are declaring a source dot multicast subject. Okay, here the multiclass subject, how it is coming here. Here we are declaring the multicast dot subscribe dot. Here we are using the next methods, where we are using the data. Okay, so multicast subscribe methods we are following, we are using here through multicast, and we are printing that multicast within this one. Okay, over there. Next question is related to the Angular is, what do you understand by the Angular material? So the Angular material is a nothing but a UI component library we are using for the professional as a developer, consists to the alternative or attractive, completely functional and websites of the web pages that we are follows the modern principle of the web application or of web design, such as grateful degradations and the browser probabilities, and the capable of doing the facilitate of the things and the website application and developments. Okay, next question is related to this one is lazy loading in Angular. Earlier also I have told you, I think this question is already over there, but again I repeat that what is lazy loading in Angular and why it is used. So the lazy loading concept I have already told, but again I repeat, by default tendency of the ng module is earlier loaded. It means that soon the app loaded ng module are loaded. Okay, immediately necessary that are the lazy loading required. Lazy loading is mandatory for a large application. Lots of routes are there, so design the pattern of the app load ng module when they are only required. Lazy loading helps you to initialize or initial bundle size of a smaller size, which is help you to 10 decrease load time. Okay, it will decrease your load time, it will decrease your CPU utilization, it will decrease your RAM memory utilization. Okay, it will improve your application performance. Everything it will do using lazy loading. If lazy loading is not there, then big application in Angular is not possible. Okay, next question is, what is the use of Angular filter? What are its distinct types? So filters are initial part of an Angular, helps to formatting the expression values, and so it is the users. We can easily add filters to services, directives, and the templates are the controllers. we can also create the personalized and filters as per the requirements. These filters allow us to organize the data in such a way that only the data that meets to the respective criteria to the display. Filters are placed after the pipe. Okay, we are just seeing various type of filters over here. Is one is a currency. It is used to convert number to the currency format. Next one is a filter. It is used to select the subset containing items from the given array. Third one is a date. It is used to convert date to the necessary format. Lowercase, it is used to convert given string to the lowercase. Uppercase is used to convert given string to the uppercase. Ordered by it is used to arrange the array to the given expression. JSON format is used to format the object into the JSON string. Next one is a number. It is used to convert to numeric value into the string. Limit to, it is used to restrict the limit of the given string on an array particular number of the elements to the string. So guys, please be prepared about Angular questions, whatever I have discussed here. Because of you only, I have just created, so be like, subscribe. Yeah. So when do we use a directive in Angular? If you create an Angular application where the multiple components need to have a similar functionalities, you have to do it by adding this functionality individually to every component. This is not a very easy task. To directive are used to cope up with these situations. Okay. So the next question is related to the application or Angular is what are the different type of directives in Angular. So there are mainly three types of directive in Angular. First one is a component directive, where the component directive are used to the form of main classes directive. To declare this directive, we have used at the red component decorator instead of at the red directive decorator. Okay, this directive we have used view styles and the selectors of the property. Next one is our structural directive. These directives are generally we use to manipulate DOM elements. Okay, this will use to manipulate our DOM element. So the structure of structural directive is has used to be a star sign before them. We can use apply them to the directive on the DOM elements. For example, if you can see, we are using the structural directive like this. We are using ng4, ng switch, ng class. Okay, so structured directive is nothing where the data will be manipulated. We can call it a structured directive of the DOM element. Okay, the next question is next point is attribute directive. The attribute directive is nothing but which is change the behavior of DOM elements, like we are using the change the classes, background images, etc. That is used for changing the behavior of attribute directive. Okay, the next question is related to this Angular is what are the string interpolation and what are the property binding in Angular. The string interpolation and the property bindings are the parts of data binding in Angular. Data binding is a feature of Angular which is used to provide a way to communicate between the component and its view. There are two type of data binding. First one is a one-way data binding. Second one is a two-way data binding. In Angular, data from the component can be inserted inside the HTML template. Any changes in the components will be directly reflected inside the HTML template is in a one-way data binding, but vice versa is not possible. On other hand, it is possible in the two-way binding. String interpolation and property binding both are the example of one-way data binding. They are allowed to one-way data bindings. But string interpolation, if you are talking about, so string interpolation is nothing but it is used to the double curly braces to display the data on the component. Angular automatically runs the expression written inside the curly braces. For example, 5 plus 5, it is coming as a 10 within a double curly braces, will be evaluated by the Angular, it is output by the 10. Okay. Second one is a for property binding. It is also one-way data binding. It will use to property binding is used for binding the data or a DOM properties into the HTML element component property. It is property binding. We are using to square brackets. Okay. Next one is it is possible to make the Angular application on a render of the server side. Yes, it is possible to render the data into the server side. Okay. Next question is what is dependency injection in Angular? Dependency injection in Angular application is to the design pattern that are the implemented by the Angular. It is used to the form core concept of the Angular dependencies and services Angular, which are the some specific functionalities. Various components are the directive in the Angular can be need these functionalities of the services. Angular provide a smooth mechanism by which these dependencies are injected into the component directives. Next question is related to the application is can we demonstrate the navigation between different route in Angular application? Yes, we can just demonstrate is like our application first application app we are created here. So first application here is imported the file, the selector name is app header templates. Okay, the file here we are created one click events functions are there, that is we can call it as event click event function. Okay, next one is here we are using a constructor here, we are using home here, we are route navigate it into one form to another form, we are using go search function. So the last for the Angular question is what is the difference between Angular and Backbone.js? So the Angular and Backbone.js is its architecture. If we are talking, so Angular follows the MVC architecture, makes two-way data bindings, driving application activities, where the Backbone.js makes to the MVP architecture does not provide any data binding. Type if you are talking about Angular and Backbone is Angular is an open source JavaScript based front-end web application framework extend HTML with a new attributes, where Backbone.js is a lightweight JavaScript library that uses to RESTful JSON interface and MVP framework. So that's it. Or if you are talking about data binding for both the things, so Angular is a little bit complex because it is uses two-way data bindings in a process, but on other hand it is Backbone has simple API. Because of this it does not have any data binding process. DOM element if you are talking about, so Angular supports the DOM elements here, dynamic bindings elements, and the DOM element as per the specific rules that works to update the records, but Backbone follows the direct of DOM and manipulation approach representing to the data and application architecture changes. If you are talking about performance, so because of two-way data binding, performance is a very good, but if you are talking about Backbone, it quite significant upper hand to performance. Angular is a smaller set but a small page of this one, it has not recommended by larger page of the application. Template if you are talking about, so Angular support template dynamic via HTML attribute, you can add them to the document to the development, easy to understand and application function level. But Backbone if you are talking about, it uses the understand of the JS, so templates that are not fully featured, so Angular templates. Testing approaches are very good in Angular, and the Angular because of prefer and build a large application for the unit testing. If you are talking about Backbone, so the testing approach is completely different for the Backbone because of its ideal and different and developing smaller web applications. Community supports are very good from the Angular side because Angular Google teams are there to support for the Angular, but Backbone it receive good level of the community support also because but it's a document and storage or the templates must else. So I think that's it for the Angular. Now we are come back to the TypeScript. Okay, So for the TypeScript, if you are talking about, so most and relevant questions for the TypeScript we are discussing first on a next video. So thank you so much. I think hope you guys are enjoying for this video, and please like and subscribe for this video. Thank you so much.